In order to be really, really successful and get yourself ahead of the pack, you have to understand everything. You have to understand, how to really look at these cases with a full arch vision. And then, the sales is a whole nother ballgame where, if you're not closing these cases, you're never going to be doing them.
Every doctor's been sold something before, and they've had experiences where it was really bad. And that's horrible. No one likes that. But we've all been through good sales experiences before where it didn't feel like sales. It felt like we got our needs met. To your point, we don't even think of it as sales.
No, you're 100% right. What you're doing is you're overcoming the objections before you get to the price point, because once you get to the price point, it becomes...
Welcome back to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more full arches so you can grow the way that you want. But you can't grow if you don't know how to close your treatment. And today I have Stacy, who does over 60 arches a month that she's selling personally. And she's going to tell you the biggest mistakes that dentists are making. And I can almost promise you that you're making some of these. If you want to sell more arches, this is going to be the episode for you. Stay tuned. All right, we are live. Welcome back, everybody. And today is going to be a special episode because you're going to learn a lot from it. Stacy agreed to come on, and Stacy talks to a ton of doctors. She works with a ton of our doctors. Plus, she's been in the industry forever. Her dad was in the industry. She's doing 60 arches a month, and she's seen a lot of people do things the right way, but she's seen more people do things the wrong way. So today I asked her to come on and share with us some of the things that she sees that doctors just usually get wrong when it comes to helping patients around full arch. So Stacy, why don't you kind of hit us with an overview of what are the biggest things that doctors are failing to understand when they want to really level up in the area of full arch?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on again. So there's so many areas that you have to understand when it comes to full arch dentistry. It's so interesting because, and you have to really, obviously there's different levels, that you can execute and do well. But in order to be really, really successful and get yourself ahead of the pack, you have to understand everything, which includes, the marketing side of it, which includes then the lead call side of it, which includes then making sure the patient not only books the appointment, but shows up to the office. Then you have to understand, how to really look at these cases from with a full arch vision, which I see it's a totally different vision than when you're diagnosing GP dentistry. So diagnosis, so that's the clinical presentation, then presenting the cases to the patient effectively, which is a lot different than GP. And then, the sales is a whole nother ballgame where, if you're not closing these cases, you're never going to be doing them. Then you've got the execution, which is a whole nother thing you have to learn. So it's a complex situation. And, I think the biggest thing that most doctors fail to realize is that you really have to understand, they take these didactic courses and they learn how to do these cases, and then they don't understand what's involved in converting the patient. And now more than ever, Dr. Valadez, who I work for, was just talking to him yesterday that now it's becoming more and more and more competitive. So if you're not on the top of your game, you're not going to close these cases. So there's just a lot that goes into it that I think doctors don't realize. They think if they just learn how to do these cases and spend money in marketing, they'll close cases, which they will. So 2 out of 10. But if you really want to level up and learn how to, not throw money down the toilet, you got to learn all the different aspects.
Hey, got an important announcement for you. We are hosting the second annual Full Arch Advantage event where you learn to create, convert, and close more full arches so your office can grow the way that you want. This is going to be in partnership with BioHorizons, and this is our second year, but the important part is it's going to be virtual, so you don't have to fly out, buy hotels, travel with your team. You can just register and block off the days and watch virtually. And right now we have early bird pricing. It's never going to be cheaper than right now. I don't even have a discount code because it's so cheap. It's only $199 right now to register. And it's for your team. It's for your dentists. It's for your treatment coordinators, your dental assistants, and your marketing managers. And you're going to learn a ton of stuff to grow. Last year's event had a 74 NPS score, which is amazing. And the feedback was really, really good. So if you're looking at leveling up, we have a ton of new content. a ton of new automations and things that you can add to your practice to really grow, and executing on the phones to make sure that you can grow the way that you want. So don't miss this. Go to Full Arch Advantage right now and sign up. This price will not be around for long. Yeah, I think a lot of people settle for mediocre results, and then they tell themselves, what I've seen with doctors is like, the reason I'm getting mediocre results is because I have clinical integrity. And they don't realize, like, yeah, but what about the 20 other people who walked out your door over the last 2 months that went and got full arch from someone else who maybe didn't have that integrity, right? Like, they're walking somewhere else and they may be getting something else. So you have an opportunity when that patient's there to educate them. So if you had to pick one thing, Stacy, like if you could wave a magic wand and fix this in the industry around full arch, what would be that one thing that you would fix with that magic wand?
The one thing I would fix is training, basically, not clinical training. That part our industry does fine. It's all the other components that go into it that give
me one out of that.
Sales.
So give me one thing. If you could, so training, I agree with you. So let's put training to the side. So if I could wave a magic wand and insert training into every office, that every office understood this, what would be that one thing that you would want installed into every office? But you can only pick one thing.
Sales training.
Okay. What inside the sales training?
You're saying that if, in terms of, how to effectively, not the doctor, right? Not the clinical presentation, because that also needs work. After working with different doctors, I've seen, a lot of doctors, think they know how to present clinically to be appealing to these patients that are just missing the mark. But having a person effectively, close these cases from a sales perspective. So basically, you mean what inside, there's different components of the sales presentation, but I think you need training on all the components. So we talked about this before. I think that's the biggest void in full arch dentistry. Like, we figured out in our field, how to do marketing. So you have all these companies that are willing to do marketing for you. We figured out how to learn how to do these cases didactically. So how to place the implants and do them. And there's all these companies that are willing to help with workflow and execution and operations and things like that. The biggest.
So what's the biggest thing that people misunderstand around sales?
The whole cycle, the whole sales cycle,
So break that down. What do you mean by that? Like, where's the disconnect there?
Basically, you have to train someone, just like in any other field. Right now, everyone just says, oh, I have a treatment coordinator. Well, these treatment coordinators, when I think of a treatment coordinator, I think of someone, presenting a root canal case and booking it. So that's fine. You have a treatment coordinator. Your treatment coordinator now is going to be selling $40,000 to $45,000 worth of treatment, $50,000 worth of treatment. There's different steps that you need to follow. One of the biggest steps that you need to do is you need to learn what's the number one thing that sells, like in any industry? What do you know, Gary?
No.
So
fear and pain.
Well, no, I'm just saying if you can. So there's a saying. It's basically, knowledge equals credibility. Credibility equals trust, and trust equals sale. If you can't get the person to trust you, you're not going to sell the case. And it was interesting. I had a patient in here yesterday. It was a full arch case. And when I go and greet the patient, right, they have the clinical presentation, they're waiting in the waiting room. We have like a separate waiting room for our full arch cases in the back. She's waiting there, and I could like gauge on a scale of like 1 to 10, like instantly when I meet them, like right away how I'm like connecting with them or how much I'm going to have to work to really build that connection. And this lady was so scared and so embarrassed. She literally walked in my office and was like this. This is how she was sitting across from me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a conversation. And I felt for her. I'm like, I immediately said to her, listen, I said, I'm so sorry. I showed empathy. I said, I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way. I said, listen to me. You don't have to talk to me with your hand over your mouth. I said, we help people in your situation every single day. I just want you to know that I'm here to help you and I'm not going to judge you. And I'm not trying to discredit how you feel. And then we start talking, and the introduction part of the sales presentation is you talk about everything besides dental. So we're talking about how we're old moms and how motherhood is a young woman's sport. And anyways, the magic behind this whole story is after, halfway through the presentation, I look up at her and her hand's down. And I didn't do anything, but that's the moment. That's what I'm talking about. This girl finally, felt like she could be a person and trusted me enough that's how she walks around every day like this. This is how this person has to live. And if you don't understand, and I understand how these people are feeling, and it's so amazing that I get to help them, right? And it was crazy. Like we finished, so you have the introduction where you're building rapport, and that's just breaking the ice. And that's, if you don't gain the trust, you're not going to close the deal. Like people buy from people they trust, right? And that also comes with knowledge. That's because, like I said, knowledge equals credibility, and credibility equals trust, right? So you have to know what you're talking about. But the cool part about it is when she left, like we didn't shake hands, like we hugged. And I'm going to be seeing her on Thursday because she's paying me on Thursday. I got her approved for her case. She's doing a double hybrid. But what I was trying to say is when she was hugging me, it was like I felt like she was never going to let go of me. So it was just it was a really awesome experience. But those are the types of things that I don't think the average, or not even average, great clinicians don't think about is having, that's what you need to do to really close these. Because she was just at another office last week.
And so often, so Stacy, so often I've posted stuff online and you've seen all the interaction on it. So often doctors will be like, oh, you're sales? No, you shouldn't be sales. But really what you're doing is you're building rapport in a relationship and building trust. That's really what you're doing. And they're like, well, what if someone wants to do something bad? They always act like we have like kryptonite, like some secret like kryptonite. And what if we hurt people out there with it? And it's like, no, we're helping people who need the treatment that weren't getting help before. How do you kind of see that? Why is there such a big disconnect between those two things?
You want to hear something funny? So it's so interesting you say that everyone thinks of sales as this dirty little word. And I read a study that a group of like Harvard professors did, and they asked like 100 people, they said the word sales and then asked everybody to write down what they associated with sales. And every single thing that they wrote down in this study was negative, pushy, arrogant, like every single word. I can't remember all the list of words, but every single word that was written down, they asked them to write down a word associated with sales, and everything was negative. And then they asked to write down, also describe a salesperson. And it was always like, the guy in the plaid suit that sells used cars, right? So not once did out of 100 people did they ever draw a picture of a woman. And the funny thing, I don't know if it's sad, is that everyone associates sales, especially in dentistry, right? Because you weren't even allowed to do TV marketing or marketing, really. Back then, it was considered unethical, like back in the day. So everyone associates, because, sales, especially in health or dental, that it's unethical and this and that. And you're closing someone, you shouldn't be talking about that. But it's like, when you learn how to do this really effectively and you understand that selling is actually genuinely educating someone and helping to guide them in the right direction, they need someone to close them and sell them, because when you do this effectively, you're not pushing them to do anything. You're collaboratively, working together to come up with the best option for them. Then that's when you hit a home run. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's interesting.
100%. And I think the best way for a doctor to understand this is every doctor's been sold something before, right? Every one of them, multiple times. And they've had experiences where it was really bad. We've all had it, right, Stacy? We've all gone through the car experience where they take your keys and your license. They don't give them back to you. You're like, okay, I don't want this car. And they're like, well, let's go find another car. No, I got to go. And you're trying to get your car keys back. Like, we've all been through that before, right? And that's horrible. No one likes that. But we've all been through good sales experiences before where it didn't feel like sales. It felt like we got our needs met. And we don't even, to your point, we don't even think of it as sales. So every doctor that's listening to this, I want you to listen right now. Think about those two experiences that you've been through. You have to create the one where you're meeting the need, not where you're pressure selling. And Stacy, one of the things that I've seen you do so well around that is anticipate. I want to say this the right way because I want to do you a service. So, and show that I've actually learned from you. Is anticipating the objections and knocking those down before you get to the end. So I'll kind of frame that for the audience. So there's only like a handful of objections to full arch. There's not a ton of them, right? Once clinically, yes, this is possible and you should do this. There's only a handful of objections, and there's not that many. And then so what you do, because we already know what those are, you actually start at the beginning and you say, okay, you start knocking these down without them knowing that you're knocking them down, right? So they're in their head, but they don't really know how to formulate them exactly. And you start knocking those over. Because if you get to the end, and then Stacy, you can tear this apart and reframe it. But when you get to the end and they go, okay, I'm going to think about it, that tells you didn't do a good job of going through the objections that everybody has. Did I get that close, or am I off base?
No, you're 100% right. So that's the way that so what you're doing is you're overcoming the objections before you get to the price point, because once you get to the price point, it becomes, so objections are actually, and another thing too, is you have to understand the difference between an objection and a question, right? But that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, so you uncover all those objections, and objections, they are actually, buying signals. They're just wanting more clarification, right? So objections are, I think I should do the treatment here, but I'm not quite sure. So then they're going to give you an objection as to why they can't get started. But if you overcome, and the whole point of it too is to get the person talking about why they want to do this treatment in the first place, right? So if you ask, that's the whole thing. And it ties back to what we were talking about with sales, is you want this person to realize that this is something that they want to do. You don't want to be the salesperson that's saying, oh, sign here and I'll give you 10% off, right? You want it to be a collaborative approach. But when you're overcoming objections, if you say something like and it's done during like the rapport building phase, if you understand really how to sell these cases, right? You're talking to them and you say, are you single? You probably wouldn't want to start with, are you married? Because then sometimes it gets weird if they are single.
Sounds a creeper. Yeah.
So are you single? And then they would say, no, actually my spouse is at home. Oh, okay. Your spouse is at home. Does he know that you're here? And, then they would say, yeah, he's 100% on board. He pushed me to go here. He's been wanting me to come. He's the one. Okay. Do the two of you usually, when you make investments like this, do the two of you usually talk about how you're going to do this? Nope. He told me to spend whatever I want, so he's 100% on board. So
you don't have to worry. So what you're doing is the biggest smokescreen in sales is, oh, I got to go talk to whoever, their spouse or the person holding the money. Right. But most of the time it's a lie. Like most of the time it's just a way of getting out of that office because your questions haven't been answered and you don't even know how to formulate all the questions, but you just don't feel like it's time to buy from them. So what you're doing there is you're knocking down that objection beforehand. So how would you work through it? And we'll close on this note, Stacy. How would you walk through that if they said, yeah, no, my spouse isn't here, but they're the ones that are going to want to be, they want to be involved, blah, 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 blah. Would you just get them on the phone right there and talk through it with them on the phone?
You could, or typically what I would do is I would give them, and just to point on what you said really quick is 9 out of 10 times the objection that they give is not their actual objection. If they say I can't afford it or I need to think about it, it's basically, I'm not sure if you're the office that I want to do it with. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but no, what I would normally do is say, you know what, I'm so glad because of course, when you have an investment like this, as important as this, I want you to talk to your spouse too. So we're going to get you set up. We're going to get you pre-approved for all the financing. We're going to go over the different options. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule you for your first appointment, which is the same regardless of which option you choose. You go home, talk to your spouse. We'll get the financing all approved. That way you guys can pick which rate you want to use. Go home, talk to your spouse, collaborate with them, bring him to your next appointment, and we'll figure out the logistics together. I'm just glad we know we're going to do the case here. We have the funds available. And we'll see you, in a few days to figure out all the logistics. It's the same first appointment anyways, regardless. So you just get it secured. You let them go home, breathe, talk to their spouse. You don't want to do the same day close technique. So I'm working with an office that just did that last week and they did a same day close. And the lady called a week later and had buyer's remorse and felt pressured and got her loan docs and wanted a refund. So we had to save the case. So so you got to be careful with all that.
And all this information is in the Full Arch Sales Academy, right?
That's the thing that's why I created this course, because, my passion actually really lies with helping patients, but I realized how much of a void there is in this area. So I created the Full Arch Sales Academy learning management system that we're now offering, which it's unbelievable what you can learn from just purchasing a course online in this field.
Yeah. So go check that out. Full Arch Sales Academy. I've seen it. I've used it for our clients. I was actually with Stacy as she filmed it, and I've been into her office and watched her whole process, and it's amazing. It will help you level up. So Stacy, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge and letting people know how to level up. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.